Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic. What's the most out of touch thing you've heard a person say? Why are you still living at home at 23? Just buy a house. Coming from someone whose parents bought her a house. My son is 26. Still lives at home. He'd have to work approximately 3.5 full-time jobs to afford a house in this absurd market. Hell, I couldn't afford the house I live in now in this market. My house is currently valued at over twice what my mortgage is for, but if I sold it, I couldn't afford to. I'm 30 and living back at home for a year, finally going to be moving out with 4 friends so we can afford renting a house. One of us is an engineer and I work in IT, and we can't really afford places on our own. Why don't you live on disability? As a response to disabled people complaining about local government cutting back programs designed for making gainful employment accessible, I work with disabled adults. This is a bigger problem than most people realize. It's a massive issue. Working through just Veterans Affairs to get disability can be a monster. It's disheartening and really does make you want to throw your hands up and just go, I'll figure it out. That said, they are pretty good once it's all said and done, and the situation is, at least, livable to me. However, I've tried to help friends that are not veterans with disability claims, and holy crap, it's a swamp out there. Nothing is connected, there's no easy access, and some of the people you run across Gardy would have slapped. And people don't realize that many government programs demand that you stay permanently in abject poverty. Get a part-time job. Fuck you, no more healthcare, no more food, no more housing assistance, no more disability income. Accidentally save more than $2,000. Fuck you too. And without that little bit of help. Homeless and starving and totally fucked. And disabled. It is disgraceful. First, it is hard to even get on disability because they deny almost 100% of first-time claims. Then people who are disabled cannot work, must hire a lawyer and fight the system. If they win, they get to receive $1,100 /month, which is well below the poverty line. And on top of that, they cannot even get a job to supplement their income. He told me as long as you're dating someone better looking than you, you're going to have to get used to me being hit on or having something on the side. You're going to have to date an ugly guy for that loyalty shit. Of all the insanity of this quote, the thing that gets me is the casual equating of something that cannot be controlled, me being hit on, with the opposite, me having someone on the side. It's like, look, as long as we live in an area with a lot of flowers, sometimes I'm going to get allergies or murder people. I mean, someone has to push up the daisies. Love it when toxic people tell you that you have to get used to or deal with their toxicity. Not deal with, but have the privilege of the toxicity. Narcissists don't see it as toxic. You are graced with their presence and lucky to have them in your life. I don't understand why you bother renting an apartment. Just buy a house. My dad, who hadn't purchased a house since 1993. My advice to my younger colleagues is to buy a house in the year 2000, like I did. They don't seem to appreciate it. Kids these days. Edit, also more free advice by Apple stock in the 1980s. Trust me on this. I bought my house in 2016 in Western Par before housing prices started skyrocketing here. My house has had a 60% increase in value in those 6 years. If I sold, I'd get more money back than what I paid in mortgage payments the past 6 years. Even more absurd, Pizzillo, my house has increased in value $6,500 plus in the last 30 days. Why do you keep taking these low-paying jobs? My parents, who think I work horrible shitty jobs for fun. But you have a degree. In English, guys. I'm a moron and things are not how they used to be. I have a friend I've known for almost my whole life who went to work as a mechanic at a pretty nice company where I am. He quit after 2.5 years because he hated it. The chemicals, fumes and conditions were affecting his overall health. I remember his parents giving him shit over it because it was a nice job with decent benefits and he made more money than most people in the rural area. He ended up taking a job working for the state, where he cuts trees down along the roadways of our state highways and roads. Making less than a third of his prior income, which sees him outside almost all hours of the day. He loves it, even during winter when it's cold as balls and the only heat comes from the interior of the vehicle they drive around. But he gets sunlight, fresh air, and he gets to work at a relatively even pace and barely gets any grief from management/supervisors. I don't know why you would go to a community college when you can go to a university. Said by a high school guidance counselor giving a lecture on college admissions essays and applications in my senior AP English class after I asked Avely if there's anything I had to do for community college. Turns out I had other classmates in the same boat who wanted to know too but felt too embarrassed to ask. Anyways, I went to community college to get my prerequisites out of the way and got my associate's degree. Then transferred into university for a competitive nursing program. I saved money from those first 2 years in community college, didn't get a loan until I got into UE. Fuck that guidance counselor. Such bad advice. I went to a school in a wealthy area and the guidance counselor would tell us to go to community college, get straight A's and an automatic acceptance into the local Ivy League school. If you can get the grades, it really is the best call financially. That's my plan currently. Partly for the above, it's cheaper for when I want to go to a 4-year, but also because I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to go down the education route, and I don't want to get into an expensive college just to drop out with debt. Recently got a new job that paid double what I used to make. When I resigned, my former boss told me money isn't everything lol. I was only making minimum wage before. As a friend once said, money can't buy happiness, but I find that it makes misery so much more comfortable. The company owes you nothing, you owe the company everything. My boss after I worked for 4 years in the company. I used to work for a guy who owned a temporary employment agency. I once watched him berate his two $7 an hour receptionists because his monthly income from the business had dropped from $40,000 to $25,000. And they had nothing whatsoever to do with how much money the business made. They were fucking receptionists. Temp agencies are the worst. They benefit the companies they work with and themselves. The employees get fucked by both. It's embarrassing when people don't realize how embarrassed they should be. Hope you find better. ***, thanks for the award, kind stranger. I was telling my boss how proud I was. My husband got a new job, he's legally blind, and she proceeds to tell me that she wishes she had a disability so she could just get handed a job. Had to walk away. F4OM that one. Removed. I could arrange that, bitch. When my best friend passed unexpectedly, a lot of people said, well, at least it wasn't one of your female friends. That would have been way harder. As though I can't have a strong platonic bond with someone of the opposite sex. Edited to add because people are asking. It may have been a stretch to say a lot and I own that. I can think of 11 people who said it to me, but I'm saying 6 to 11 because if you take my co-workers and bosses who said it out of the equation, it was 6 people. I gave my co-workers and bosses the benefit of the doubt as I'm in the medical field and a lot of people in the medical field are numb to death and grieving and have poorly thought out responses regarding death. It doesn't make their comments any less fucked up though. I also returned to work the day after finding out he passed, so I was greeted with these comments without taking time to properly grieve. And I'm a woman, living in the US. What the fuck? Now that is the definition of toxic person who said that to you. What does the gender of a passing friend have to do with the quantity of grieving that has to be done? I don't understand what the person meant. Some people have it in their heads that men and women can't just be friends, or that they can't have as strong a bond as same-gender friendships. I think it stems from a traditionalist view of gender roles being highly separated, like there's this regressive idea that men and women are so different they are practically different species, so the only reason they'd want to interact is if they are attracted to each other and they could never have a strong friendship. Which is bullshit, but it's surprisingly pervasive in a lot of ways. Usually people aren't so open about it as Op's example, but it's a view that's present in a lot more subtle ways all over the place. Who is your chocolatier? Okay, I need to know the context for this one, if you'd care to share it. I was at an open house looking for a new property and 2 women were discussing their favorite restaurants. One asked this question and I remembered that some people just live such different lives. That's some Tahir al-Jamil level nonsense. Who's that? Don't you mean Kamala? If you can't afford gas, buy an electric vehicle. Ha ha ha, this one kills me. Like, yeah, you know what, Jim, I can't afford the $100 of gas, I better go buy a $60,000 plus electric vehicle. And if you live in an apartment, then the EV industry shits on you because a vast majority of communal living situations have little to no EV charging stations if at all, and if they do have any, then they're usually like 5 to 10 of them way over by the leasing office, meant for like a quarter mile's worth of more than a dozen apartment buildings. If you own a house, then depending on when it was built, you would have to pay money to have a plug in the house changed so that it can charge an EV fast enough to be worth it. My dad just died about a month ago. My company gave me 4 days unpaid off. I was really close to my father, so this was hard for me to deal with. My paycheck was enough to pay bills, but I had to buy my groceries on credit card to get by. My boss's brother-in-law died the following week. All he talks about is how hard this is on his wife. Between the stress of her brother dying, and the reno on their $1 million cabin, he's taking his whole family to Hawaii for 10 days this month to try to deal with their grief. Meanwhile, I'm pricing urns out on Amazon to try to save money, trying to sell my dad's tools to help my mom, working full-time and taking care of a toddler. I'm so sorry for your loss. Hang in there. Also, your boss is a dick. Thank you. I just thought it was crazy that the staff I work with here went together, got me a sympathy card and $175 gas card so I would have money to go see my mom. My boss didn't even get me a card. I've been here for 14 years. My dad is a customer here. He bought his truck and did all his service work here. It didn't happen to me personally, but I've got an extremely similar story. I used to work with an extremely competent and really nice supervisor, we'll call her Sally, who didn't show up for work one day. Our boss, Matt, who was also the owner, wanted to terminate Sally immediately until it came out that her husband died in a really violent, freak accident. Cooler heads prevail. Matt backs off as I tell him that I can cover for Sally for as long as she needs. About 2 weeks pass, and in spite of Sally checking in every so often and being in the bereavement guidelines, Matt starts interrogating people, asking when Sally's returning, complaining that her coming in to collect a paycheck. Side story, Matt didn't believe in direct deposit, was really unprofessional given how long she'd been gone. He even starts quietly asking people how it would look if he went ahead and replaced Sally. Long story short, Sally ended up returning like immediately after the funeral was concluded. In my opinion, Matt indirectly pressured her to return. 3 months later, Matt's dog died. Don't get me wrong, he was a gentle, adorable English bulldog that Matt would bring every so often, but he was also old and extremely sick, and Matt had about 6 months warning that his dog would pass away. Matt was utterly devastated, like ashes and sackcloth forlorn. Not only does he completely fall off the radar for a month, but he only resurfaced to have a meeting where he explains that he was heading to Hawaii to recenter and I shit you not looks Sally dead in the eyes and tells her that she should understand. Seems a lot of people don't think things aren't bad until it's happening to them. Healthcare. Not bad until you get sick. Bereavement. 4 days is adequate until it's your loved ones. Police. Just doing their job until you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. Weed. Shouldn't be legal until you're constantly nauseous from the cancer meds. Minimum wage. It's a fair wage until you watch your child struggle to make ends meet. The road isn't bad until you start driving on it.